One word that get used a lot is culture. Well, when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes, their Carolina culture really means something.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your host, Zach Martin, and on today's show, we're going to be talking all things Carolina culture and rosters and everything else. So we're going to do what it means for, defining Carolina culture, especially with the fact that the Hurricanes just won the Stanley Cup. Also going to talk about the blue collar press, which actually was confirmed that it was not just a random thing, but an actual, cloak and dagger-ish mindset to get this team prepared to win a Stanley Cup one day. And then we're actually going to pull a little bit on looking at how just the Hurricanes roster construction made everything work for them to win Stanley Cup. So let's go and talk about what it means to define Carolina culture, because we heard a lot, for this season that was their motto. It's the hashtag they always do on social media. A bunch of teams got Leafs forever or Futures Teal, stuff like that. And the Hurricanes are a team that changed theirs almost every year. We've had Cause Chaos. We've had Take Warning. This year was Carolina culture and was built around, Raleigh, North Carolina in general and stuff like that. So when you talk about the culture here in Carolina, what does that really mean when you look at the fact that it starts from Rod Brind'Amour, it starts, with ownership and the GM, and then, like I said, goes from Rod and passes down. So with this current roster, they really took the iteration of what it means to be a family, a team that's really known for their culture, because that's all you hear a lot when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes is just how much of a close-knit group this is, how much of a family this team is. And you saw that during the Cup final and through the playoffs and stuff like that. And even after too, it's like just the fact of how close these guys are and, just how much they battled for each other. Like you hear it all the time. This is the tightest group in the NHL. And you hear, when players come in, that's the first thing you hear is, oh, it's the culture. And then they immediately come in and it feels like they're part of the, team right away. Like guys like Brandon Bussey who come in, 4 days before the regular season starts. You get Karen Jamerla coming in on a sign-in trade. Nikolai Ehlers is a free agent. The one thing they always talked about is how they immediately were, brought in and are already feel like they've been there for a long time, but this could be their first year. And that's something that's really starts off with Rod Brind'Amour, and it moves down and goes through the leadership of, Jordan Staal, Jordan Martinook, Jacob Slavin, Sebastian Aho, and even some of the guys who don't have letters, guys like, you're looking at Sean Walker, Shane Gostisbehere, even Seth Jarvis is looked at as a little bit of a leader too, especially for the young guys of like Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake, because Seth Jarvis is not that much older than those guys. So he's not that nice little bridge between those really young guys and the veteran group that's in the locker room. And it does help go a long way. And, when they ask about Rod Brind'Amour, to the players, like, what does it mean? It's just, he means a lot to them, to the culture that is the team, because he is the face of the franchise for close to almost 3 decades now, winning as a captain, now as a head coach, winning the Stanley Cup for the second time. But it's just, they want to run through a wall for Rod, and they want to do the same thing. And you look at, everyone praises the captain for being a leader on and off the ice. He's talked about the leadership group. It's just the guys who are just a team. They're just a family. And it's like family gets thrown around a lot in sports, but when you look at when you're in the locker room or when you just hear the guys talk about each other, you can definitely tell that this is a family. This is a really close group. And when you look at this iteration of the Carolina Hurricanes, you're talking about guys who had career years built off of this, and the fact that everyone pulled on the same rope, with the fact that you look at how the roster was, you talk about the first couple months of the season, Sean Walker was the only guy that was healthy for pretty much the entire season on the defense. I know technically he played in 81 games, but he took the last game off due to rest. He could have joined Nikolai Ehlers in playing all 82 games. So essentially it was Ehlers and, Sean Walker essentially were the two guys that were the healthiest the entire season who didn't really miss a game due to injury. One was just because of rest. But the fact that the Hurricanes battled all season through a lot of injuries, going down really deep into your depth chart. I mean, you're talking, Charles Alex Legault had played 12 games before he got hurt. You had, Joel Niestrom play 38 games. Like, that's how close it was for him, too. And the fact he had to use Mike Riley for 42 games, and his name's going to go on the cup because he played 42 regular season games. You have to play 41 at least to get on there. But then, like I said, you go to, Legault for a little bit. Then you go to Dominic Fensore played a game. Ronan Seeley played for a game. But that's just due to, giving guys rest. But the fact that you had Jacob Slavin for 39 games this year, which is crazy to think about. Jalen Chatfield played 72. Alexander Keishan played 81, missed a game due to injury. Even like Shane Gostisbehere, he played in 55 games, almost had 50 points. But that's just the fact that, like I said, this defense really had to go through a lot. Like Keandre Miller only played 72 games because he was out due to injury. But the Hurricanes were able to battle through it all season on the defense. Like I said, having to go down to their 9th, 10th, almost 11th defenseman. Like, they even had Gavin Bayreuther up as a healthy extra for a little bit just in case. But the Hurricanes were able to get it done there. And then, the forward core had a little bit of a buck too, where you lost some guys. So you saw, Bradley Nadeau for a little bit. You saw, just Barry Kokoniemi come in, as, when he wasn't healthy scratch, he played 42 games. So he's going to be on the cup too. But it's just, that is like I said, pulling on the rope. Like, they brought in Nick Delorier essentially out of, they got him on a trade, and he played, he didn't really play a whole lot of games for the Carolina Hurricanes in the regular season. I mean, technically he played 31 throughout the 25-26 season, but when you talk about his time with the Hurricanes, he played a grand total of 7 games in the regular season. Like, that's all he did. A grand total of 7, and that's towards the back half of the year. But hey, he did get a point out of it. And he played 1 playoff game. But that's what I'm saying, though. It's just the fact that even with guys who just come in for a little bit, they instantly just fall right into the culture. And the fact that Delorier comes in and everyone loves him in the locker room, and there's, like, hey, why not bring him back for, as an extra forward, just in case of the fact he's a great locker room guy. That's just how much this team values locker room guys and just the culture and just everything is built together. So, like I said, this iteration of the Hurricanes took what Rod Brind'Amour is always talking about, of pulling on the same rope, defining what Carolina culture is, being a family, setting the tone. And that, like I said, starts from Rod, goes to the, to the captains, goes to the rest of the locker room. And, that's how this team was able to battle through all the injuries, battle through a not so great end of December where, you basically blow 5 leads in a span of 8 games going into January. You had a stretch where you lose to Florida, not so great twice, and you lose to Tampa Bay too. So you're having to battle through all that. At one point you had a struggling power play, and then it takes off from December until the end of the year. You make the 4th best power play in the entire league. PK, has been kind of, had its struggles here and there because you didn't have your normal guys in there, but they were still able to hold the fort down and still got the thing done. But then, that turns into the Hurricanes having, 7 20 goal scorers. Like Jordan Staal, for the first time in a decade, had 20 goals. And the fact that the Hurricanes had 7, which is crazy to think about, of just being able to get that done. And on top of that, you bring in Brandon Bussey, who, like I said, claimed off of waivers as a safety net for if the Hurricanes lose Kane Primo, which they did get him back. And he goes and basically, plugs the leaks in a possible sinking ship with, Freddie Anderson struggling at one point for 2 months. Pierre Kachekov's out for pretty much the entire rest of the year. He made a few starts, but missed the whole rest of the regular season due to hip surgery. And Bussey comes in, fastest to 10, fastest to 15 in terms of wins, and then wins 21 in his first 25 games, gets some shutouts along the way, gets a point as well. And that's just, and him just coming in, and they put a lot of faith in him to where he gets a 3-year contract extension. Joel Niestrom gets an extension. Like, and even before, the season even started, Jackson Blake, Logan Stanko, and those guys get contract extensions. Eric Robinson, at some point gets one too. And Mark Jankowski gets an extension. He came in last year, and he was just part of the team that he had a hot start, and he fits when it comes to the Hurricanes. So, it's just a culmination of just, bringing these guys, Taylor Hall, Logan Stanko, and extending all of them as well. And we'll talk more about the roster construction in segment 3, but when you hear culture, when you hear family, this Hurricanes team, bar none, actually walks it. They walk the walk and talk the talk. They embody what it means to be a family, to be a culture. They define what it means to be a Carolina culture team. Starts from the top and then goes down from there. And that's not just on the ice, but also off the ice too. And that's even, in things you don't really see, like, some blue collar presses. Stick around. We'll talk more about that and just how much that means to what, over 5 years led to the biggest moment for a lot of these guys' career in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. As companies grow, customer support gets a lot more complicated. Most customers means more questions, more channels to manage, and higher expectations for fast, personalized service. That's usually when businesses start looking at AI, but most solutions either feel too generic or take forever to implement. And that's where Decagon comes in. Decagon helps companies create personalized, concierge-style customer service experiences with AI agents across chat, email, voice, and SMS. Their agents are available 24/7, feel natural to talk to, and can resolve customer requests on their own, helping businesses scale support without losing that personal touch. The best customer experiences don't happen by accident, whether it's in business or sports. People remember organizations that respond quickly, understand context, to make every interaction feel personal. We've all had situations where something went wrong, but what you remember is how the company handled it. The organizations that respond quickly and solve problems efficiently. Decagon is helping businesses create more of those moments by giving customers fast, personalized support whenever they need it. Ready to transform your customer support? Go to decagon.ai/lockedonNHL to get a personalized demo and see what Decagon can do for your team. That's decagon.ai/lockedonNHL. Throughout the NHL finals, every shift matters, every moment is intense, and everything comes down to execution when the pressure is at its highest. And just like athletes must be ready to perform when the puck drops, a lot of guys want that same sense of readiness and confidence in their own lives too. That's where Rougit comes in. Rougit offers modern performance-focused treatments designed to help you be ready when it matters. Their top option, Rougit Ready, is a fast-acting, clinically formulated treatment that comes in a simple mint that dissolves under your tongue. It's designed for convenience with fast absorption and effects that can begin in about 15 minutes. It may last up to 36 hours. They also offer Go Long, which is formulated to support both performance and control for longer lasting needs. It's all about helping guys feel prepared, confident, and in control. In the playoffs, readiness isn't optional. It's everything. And for a lot of guys, that idea of being ready at the right moment carries over into everyday life too. That's exactly what Rougit is built around. A lot of it comes down to confidence. When you're not worrying about whether things will work when you need them to, it just lets you stay focused and in the moment. So head to Rougit.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your ED treatment. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL for 50% off. Rougit, performance medicine for men. Get your daily Carolina Hurricanes fix completely ad-free by joining the Everyday Club today. Start your 7-day free trial right now and get closer to your team without the interruptions. Click link in the show notes or the description to claim your free trial today and join us at our Everydayer Club. Now, welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we kind of talked about what it meant for this team to embody, to define the Carolina culture that stems from Rod Brind'Amour through the leadership core of the captains down to the rest of the locker room and so on and so forth. But just like on the ice and off the ice, it also kind of translates to the locker room as well. A story that did come out, throughout the playoffs, and it was actually, corroborated by Rod Brind'Amour. It's funny for the fact that, Sebastian Aho, after the Hurricanes won the Cup, actually told a story about, their blue collar press, which was basically what everyone saw in the, that docuseries behind the scenes, with the NHL during the playoffs. We all saw that the guys were after their workouts, after every workout, take this big cinder block, one press over their head and puts it down. And Bill Bernstein, being just the absolute legend that he is, said, "Oh yeah, I come from a blue collar community, where the toughest job is being a Mason and stuff like that. So it's just trying to remember those guys, like the process of think about the Masons and, their hard work and dedicating to their craft." So that's kind of what they went with. And the thing is, this wasn't just this season type of thing. We're talking 5 years ago. So we're talking 3 seasons into the Rod Brind'Amour era of adding this blue collar press. And the way Rod talked about it on the Pat McAfee show on Monday, and this is what he said: 5 years ago, my strength and conditioning coach, and I have the best strength and conditioning coach in the league, Bill Bernstein, and our head athletic trainer, Doug Bennett, went to Home Depot. They were trying to figure out how to finish off your day with a lift. They put a cinder block on a scale, and it ended up being 35 pounds. It just hit them that it was the same weight as a Stanley Cup. So they sent me a picture of it, and I'm like, you've got to bring that in. And the thing is, that's when they implemented the blue collar press and, talking about the Masons and all of that stuff. And, it's funny that Brind'Amour even goes on to say that, we're a big detail team. We didn't tell the guys for 5 years we did this thing sitting there. So the fact that the Stanley Cup weighs 34.5 pounds, they somehow just magically find a cinder block at Home Depot weighing 35 pounds. And for 5 years, after every workout, every Hurricanes play before they're done, before they walk out of the weight room, pick up the cinder block, lift it over their head, and put it back down, and that's it. And that's their blue collar press. And it's crazy to think that that's kind of something that they just brought on and just did. And the fact that it came to fruition about the guys figuring it out during the final. Rod Brind'Amour said, to Pat McAfee and them, during the final, Billy comes to me and he says, "You've got to tell them the real reason." That was going to wait until after we won, but we hadn't won. So we've got to throwing the chips on the table here. So I told the boys the real reason that we have this is because we prepare for everything. And yeah, sure enough, they were prepared, because when those guys lift the Stanley Cup over their head on Sunday night, they were ready to go and had no problems lifting that 34.5 pound trophy over the head, which is the hardest trophy to win in sports. But like I said, that goes into this culture, this on the ice, off the ice, in the weight room. It's just the fact that it's just the gravitas of it all. Just the sense of how much that leads to this. Just a random cinder block comes in 5 years ago. They make up this blue collar press, talking about the Masons and all that stuff. And 5 years later, in a cup final, they tell these guys, actually, there was a reason for this. It's because we're preparing you to lift the Stanley Cup. We haven't done it yet. We're close. We're going to tell you what it is now. And lo and behold, they go and win the dang thing. And it's just funny the fact that Aho brings it up. Rod confirms it on Pat McAfee. And now we know, oh my goodness, this cinder block that was the behind the scenes thing for the Hurricanes for the playoffs with the NHL was an implemented, detailed oriented, cloak and dagger-ish type of thing, where it's like, we're getting you guys ready to lift the Stanley Cup whenever that does happen. You have no problems lifting 35 pounds. Well, trophy's 34.5 pounds, and obviously these guys weren't going to have any issues doing it, because you see some of these guys and how much they work out. It's crazy, but they had no issues. And like I said, that just adds on to the Carolina culture that starts from Rod, goes through Bill Bernstein, goes through Doug Bennett, goes down to the team and all that. It's just, this team is so close. This team is so family oriented. That's why a lot of guys love staying in Raleigh. The fact that Cam Ward, Eric Cole, before he got the job down in Charleston, South Carolina, coaching, some youth hockey, but, Cam Ward's still there. Chad LaRose is still there. Rod Brind'Amour has been there forever. Of course, it helps that, his wife and her family are from the area too. But and Jacob Slavin lives here full-time. Jalen Chatfield and his, family live here full-time. That's why a lot of guys just love the area, is because it's the culture around this team. It's been built since Rod Brind'Amour, and it's going to continue after that as well, with just the guys in the locker room. Now, speaking of the guys in the locker room, Gotta give some props to Eric Tulsky for the roster construction, because this team is not only winning right now, but they're winning to keep winning. It's going to be open for a long time, so stick around. We'll talk about the roster construction here in a second on a Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. If you got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why the Fruity Rainbow 5-Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. Fruity Rainbow 5-Hour Energy Shots treat your taste buds to an explosion of fruity flavor with a tasty caffeine kick that's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. It's a zero sugar treat that's sweet tooth approved, and it's very convenient. It's a small portable shot you can grab whenever you need a little pick-me-up. And honestly, it can become a go-to for you when you want something sweet without going overboard. So get candy-flavored chaos with the Fruity Rainbow 5-Hour Energy Shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. All right, welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. All right, so we talked about what it means to define Carolina culture. We talked about the blue-collar press and how that just adds on to the aura of culture and family and all that stuff with the Carolina Hurricanes. But now let's talk about the roster. Have built a culture around a team that we're looking for guys who will fit the Carolina Hurricane system. Yeah, you could want all the superstars you want, and then they've tried that on a bunch of different guys, and it just didn't work out one way or the other. You know, cap space with Jay Gensel, Mika Rantanen just didn't fit the system. You know, could be the same thing for Michael Bunting, Dmitry Orlov, this, that, and the other. So the Carolina Hurricanes for a few years had to kind of, find the guys that were necessary to fit the system, finding those pieces. That's when you get a Shane Gostisbehere, a Sean Walker, Keandre Miller. You get Nikolai Ehlers comes in. How's he going to fit in the system? Fits in pretty dang well. Logan Stankoven, the Hurricanes view him as, he's born to be a Carolina Hurricane. Obviously, he's done that. Jackson Blake has a career year. Taylor Hall has a resurgence in his career, and he fits the system as well. Brandon Bussey, you look at the defense, just all these guys that they brought in, it's because they were trying to find the roster construction that fits with, are you going to pull on the same rope? Are you going to play Carolina Hurricanes hockey? And they were finding guys who fit the system. And you know what? It almost reminds you of the 1980 U.S. Olympic team. It's not finding the best players on the planet, because we all saw what happened to the NHL All-Stars when they played the Soviet Union back then. They got absolutely smoked. That team was looking for the guys who will fit the system well and will pull on the same rope. This is the same exact thing when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes. When you look at it top to bottom, you're talking about a lot of guys. They're going to be here for a long time. Like the fact, too, that Tulsky and this front office have built a system to where this team has got guys for a while, and you don't really have any. You might have one possible contract, maybe isn't the greatest, but in terms of just where the cap is going, it's not that terrible. It's just not what you wanted. But overall, you got Sebastian Aho signed through the 31-32 season, making $9.75 million. That's great for a guy who's, a high elite star player, that is only, he's 28 years old. You look at Nikolai Ehlers, he still has another 5 years on his contract for $8.5 million, and he just had a career year where he played every single game for you and just had 9 points in the Stanley Cup final in his first year. Like this guy's in his first year within the system, starts in the top 6, plays on the third line with the Jordans for the rest of the year, and absolutely just crushes it in the regular season and in the playoffs. I think he finished like third. He finished like second on the team in points in the regular season and was like third in terms of the playoffs. Andrei Svechnikov has a career season, $7.75 million for the next 3. You got Seth Jarvis through the 31-32 season, just like Sebastian Aho, making $7.42 million. Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake just won the Stanley Cup at 22 and 23 years old. Logan being 23, Jackson being 22. They won it on their rookie contracts. The crazy part is their new deals don't kick in until next year, and that runs through the end of the 2033-34 season. Combined, make less than $12 million. Stankoven's making $6 million per year. Blake's making 5.117. Talk about extending a super long window that also has Seth Jarvis to 32, Aho to 32, Ehlers to 31, and you got those two guys through the 34 season. And that's crazy to think about, in the fact that, Andrei Svechnikov does have 3 years left on his contract at 26, but come on. By the time that contract says going to be 29, you can give him a nice little deal to have him be a Hurricane for life if you really wanted to. 2 more years on Taylor Hall's deal. Get William Carrier for another 4 years at $2.15 million. Absolutely amazing. Mark Jankowski's got, his new contract kicks in, 1.85. Eric Robinson's going to be in his second year of his 4-year deal. It's at 1.7. Those are absolute steals. You got Jordan Martinook and Jordan Staal in the last year of their contracts at, Martinook's at 3.125. Jordan Stahl's at 2.975. Deals on deals on deals. The only forward who's not signed is Nick Delorier. And if you really wanted to, you can bring him back on a nice little, 1 by 1, 1 by 1.5. You could give Nick Delorier some money that's not going to break the bank when you're looking at a team that has $11.98 million on their cap space. And this with the cap going up to $104 million. Right now, their cap is at $92.019 million. That's where they're sitting at right now. They have 11.98 left on their cap. Defensively, you get Kieran Miller at $7.5 million through the 2032-33 season, and Jacob Slavin is making $6.396 million through the 33 season as well. That's on top of Jarvis in the 32, Aho in 32, Ehlers in 31, and that's Stankoven and Blake in the 34 seasons. Those two guys are going to be here 1 year longer than Miller and Slavin. And those two guys combined are making less than $14 million. That's absolutely amazing. You still got Sean Walker for another 3 years at $3.65 million. That goes to the end of the 28-29 season. Okay, and he was just one of your anchors on your blue line the entire regular season, and him and Miller were an underrated duo for the entire playoffs. And you got Shane Gostisbehere 1 year left at 3.2 next season. Jalen Chaffee, who's 30, at 3.075. 5 of your guys on your entire D-core are signed through next year at least, and you could bring those guys back if you really wanted to. Mike Riley's the only UFA. Alexander Nikishin's an RFA. You could figure out how you want to give him that type of deal, but he's not a UFA until the 29-30 season, just because of RFA statuses and all this other stuff. But he's only 24. Looking at goalies real quick, the fact that the Hurricanes are going to pay 2 goalies less than $4 million combined next season. Peter Kochetkov at 26 is going to make $2 million in his last year of his deal. And Brandon Blyce's 3-year deal kicks in next season at $1.9 million. And he just won you a Stanley Cup off of 3 straight wins in his first 3 straight starts. Oh, and on top of that, the 28-29 season, he's got a 10-team no-trade list just because. But he's 27 with 3 more years. He's going to be 30 by the time this contract's up. Who knows what he's looking at? You got to figure what you're going to do with Piotr. Freddie Anderson's the only unrestricted free agent, and he helps you, get to the Stanley Cup final and won you a game in the Cup final for his first one of his career. But I'm just saying, that's just this main roster. That's not talking about, Charles Alexis Legault. You're talking about Joel Nystrom, Bradley Nadeau, Felix Ungerstorm, Charlie Serrato, who just got his contract. There's so many guys in Chicago that could be ready at some point. I'm just saying. And the fact that the Hurricanes, they have 4 draft picks this year, but don't be surprised if they trade their first rounder to get a couple seconds, just because that's what the Hurricanes love to do. But you're talking a first rounder in 27 with all their picks, 2 first rounders in 28 with all their picks. They have a buttload of picks, and they could trade back out of the first round this year to go grab 1 more extra to really have 5 draft picks from rounds 2 through 7, just because. I'm saying the roster construction that Tulsky and his team have done, and the fact that, the pro scouts and the amateur scouts, this window, this culture that's going to be in Carolina, it's not closing anytime soon. We could be somewhere between the beginning and the middle of this, or we could be really at the beginning of what a window could be for the Hurricanes, where you're possibly talking a dynasty, essentially. But like I said, we're talking 8 years of this team building, and now that they've been great the last 4 seasons. Maybe this is the window they've been in. But in reality, this window doesn't seem like it's going to close anytime soon, and that's just because of the fact that you're talking culture, roster construction, and all that. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to be a very scary team for a good bit. And that's crazy to think about. But, man, it's just, I know we'll do more off-season stuff starting next week. This week is just going to be, talking all things Stanley Cup, culture, this, that, what have you. So, we got the Friday episode. We'll talk more about getting ready for the parade on Saturday, stuff like that. And then, like I said, next week we'll change gears to the draft, free agency, and all of that stuff. But until we do all of that, guys, this will be the Thursday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making it for today. If you're missing an episode, every day is built Locked On Hurricanes ad-free, plus the members-only Discord access and more. Head to the link in the show notes or the description to join the club today. It's $5 a month, $50 for an entire year, and don't forget to take advantage of our 7-day free trial. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at One True Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where if you do click the link tree in my bios on my social media, you can find all my written content at thehockeywriters.com. I'm putting out so much stuff recently, talking about the Hurricanes becoming Stanley Cup champions, talking about how, Jordan Staal is deserving of the Conn Smythe, doing a full 19 game recap journey through the entire play for the Carolina Hurricanes. And when you listen to the show here on Thursday, I might even have 3 stars of the Stanley Cup final as well for the Hurricanes. So make sure to check all that out at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to listen to the show, well, you can find us on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review. On YouTube, well, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notifications so miss the show. Hit the thumbs up so you know if you like the show as well. Share with other Canucks who come everydayers just like you. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Thursday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Thursday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.